Well, that's a long song. That's Red Clay. It's a song I wrote years ago. Red Clay is an area about 30 minutes away from my house right here. And it's the place where the last council grounds, it's the last council grounds before they set out on the Trail of Tears, where that took place. And they set out in 2 or 3 different locations. Another location they left from there in Red Clay over to Charleston, where they had Fort Cass, and they held really like prisoners. It's an amazing story. I was just out in Oklahoma recently. If you go out that way and from here, the drive through Fayetteville, Arkansas, and on over to Oklahoma or however you go, that's a long ways. And anyway, so many of those poor folks died off on the Trail of Tears. It was a very, very sad part of our American history. But I wrote a song to commemorate that and in appreciation and a love for our Native Americans. And my good friend Eric Johnson recorded that with me on an album. It's called Bridging the Gap. Bridging the Gap is a song I wrote for my son and I to play together. As far as I can remember, I used this very guitar, and this is a DDSM Taylor. And by the way, I'm going through this. I'm going from this to the orange acoustic pedal, and then the Zoom AC3, and then goes in from there into TC Chorus, which I got that idea, the old TC Chorus. It plugs in the wall from Eric Johnson. I got that idea from him, and also goes into the Crush Acoustic and then to the Trim Lord 30 orange amp. So special thanks to Orange, Zoom, also GHS strings, which these are old. These strings are old. And I keep this guitar out all the time in my studio. Don't always keep guitars out, but I keep this one out a lot. But this is the very guitar, as far as I can remember, that I used in that recording. Dave Pomeroy played bass. Tommy Taylor played the drums. That has played with Eric for years as well. And this is a great guitar. I've used this all over the world. I remember hitting a light bar as I was, I'm not a very tall guy, but it wasn't a very tall light bar ahead, and I knocked the finish off the back of it in Hitchin and outside of London at the Sun Hotel. This guitar went around the world, and I love it. It's a great guitar. It's just a brief history. I was going to talk about my signature guitars, but there's such a history, especially in this guitar. I may not be able to cover the others until next month. But by the way, welcome to our January Pick Fest for 2022. That was Red Clay, and I usually don't do anything like that, but this is just a different year. I just want to do what I do, and so it started off with Bob Taylor coming up to me, and he said, Doyle, I want you to help us with the project with some hexaphonic pickups. And I had just been talking with Phil Kagi, and he asked me if I knew Lloyd Baggs. I said, no, I never met him. He said, I've been using his pickups for years. The LB6, that's the one to get. And same one that James Taylor uses, Paul McCartney. And it's a wonderful pickup. But I said, well, Bob has been wanting me to experiment around with hexaphonic, which means hex meaning 6. Each string has its own separate pickup. And so this is something that we actually designed together. A lot of people take credit for this, but I worked for 3 years on this pickup system along with Lloyd, and he'll tell you about that. He didn't use it on anything for a while. And they quit making it. Then they came back out with it recently. I think Godin actually has a little different spin on this pickup now. But these are separate little, they're encased in brass. The top, I think, is zinc. And so it's a little softer. it sounds incredible. Each string has its own separate voice. They're not even touching. There's wood in between here, so they have a little pocket all their own. And it has the LR Baggs EQ system here and a preamp. And so the story goes, I have been playing Taylor guitars for 2 or 3 years. I landed a contract with, I had Step One Records and went from Step One Records in Nashville to a Hollywood label. Actually, it was RCA. Wyndham Hill was bought out by them, RCA Records. But I was on the Wyndham Hill. I was the first artist they signed, which is a real honor there. But we have been experimenting around with some guitar, with these pickups. And then T.J. Baden, who was the vice president of Taylor at the time, so it was Bob Taylor, Kurt Listug, his partner, and then T.J. And he came up to me and he said, we've been talking and it's time you have your own signature guitar. And that was a dream come true. Not even that. I'd never dreamed that would happen to me. But it did. So I never asked for a signature guitar. I never asked anybody for a signature guitar. That was just something that they came to me about. And so if you could do anything with a guitar, and TJ even said, well, you sound better, Doyle, with maple. I think that's your wood. And I said, yeah, I agree. I agree. Because it really takes, it has moxie. Is that all you have? Give me more. And some guitars just sort of bottom out because, as Lloyd Baggs told me one time, this is a speaker. This is like an acoustic speaker, and this is a speaker box, and this is the cone. The energy comes down. This is where you get your signal, and it just... And I found out too by using my daughter's little grand concert in a show. I left all my guitars in California, flew home. I had to play at a school, and so I borrowed her guitar. And I thought, wow, it's just so quick, so fast. So I love the size of the Grand Auditorium, 16-inch body. But we went with the depth of what then was the depth of the Grand Concert. Now they've changed it somewhat since then. And the initial guitar was 25 and a half. This one is 24 and 7/8, which is the scale that I came up with Bob Taylor. He sent me a couple of Frankensteins. One was a 24 and 3/4 like a Les Paul, and then the other one was a 25-inch like a Paul Reed Smith. I said, well, if you split it down the middle for an acoustic guitar, it's perfect. So 24 and 7/8, he said, that's going to be our short scale from now on. So all of the T5s and the grand concerts, all of those are with what we came up with, Bob and I. And so it's been a long time ago, and we were talking about it not too long ago. And, it's not something that just happened by accident. I mean, this is something that you feel, and you go out and play, and you use it, and you try it out. And it's not that we're all just that smart. It's just one of those things, we say trial and error. Some of it is that. Some of it is just divine inspired ideas. And Bob Taylor, it's hard to pin him down to say, Bob, you are a genius, because he gives the credit to everybody else. But Bob Taylor, you are a genius. I mean, you really are. Not only, and I have an Olson guitar here, a beautiful handmade Olson, and I just love this guitar. It's a wonderful instrument. But James Olson would say the same thing. He can build one at a time or a batch at a time, but you build thousands, and and you build them great. And so that was a great thing. However, at the year this came out, Bob was designing the new facility there at Taylor, a new factory. And so when my guitar came out, I remember in an interview, we were talking together. He said, well, I can't tell you that much about Doyle's guitar, but I can tell you how many inches there are, or that you need in a handicapped bathroom and a restroom stall. And but he said this was all Doyle, and so I had to say he just gave me the reins and said, take it, go with it. LR Baggs did all the electronics, the depth of a grand concert, size of a grand auditorium, of course, an 1 3/4 neck. We also went, instead of a mahogany neck, I wanted a maple neck like an L5. Or like a Gretsch. In fact, years later, Bob says, Doyle, your guitar really was more of a Gretsch than it was a Taylor. And if you look here, we even use the and I said that actually too in front of Fred. Fred Gretsch is a good friend of mine. But we even use the Chet Atkins style markers, and I cleared that with Chet. Probably should have cleared that with Fred Gretsch, but I didn't know Fred at the time. So Chet was looking at my guitar one time at one of the Chet Atkins appreciation conventions, and I said, "Hey, remember I talked to you about that?" I said, "I wasn't copying you, I was honoring you." "Yeah, I suppose you said that, you know." And but he bought it, so he was very nice about it. And Taylor, or I should say T.J. Baden at Taylor, also said, we want to say something that says Doyle Dykes without actually saying Doyle Dykes. And I said, well, you know, a lot of people seem to like the story about the white rose. He said, that's perfect. We'll put a white rose on there. And so Larry Breedlove actually designed that, and he came up with a drawing, and the one that I finally approved. I was in Columbia, South Carolina. I'll never forget. I was playing over at Jerry's place over there. I can't remember the store now, but it's Sims Music, Jerry Sims. And I was at a hotel, and I went in and I said, "Do you have a fax machine?" And he faxed the drawing over. And so Larry Breedlove with Breedlove Guitars, he actually left. He and Bob, it's a long story, but they were surfing buddies, you know, way back in the day. And Larry was a surfer, but he started building guitars. And James Goodall, they were all in that little group together. How God had his hand on one little group of guys that just changed the guitar world. It's amazing to me. And so Larry Breedlove started Breedlove Guitars. He sold it out to his brother. Didn't like running a factory, so he went back to El Cajon and started building once again with Bob Taylor until he retired a few years ago. And he and Dave Hostler were two of the top engineers and designers there. And so Larry had a lot to do with the building in fact, he built my prototype. He said, well, Doyle, they're allowing me to build you one more. And that's why I said, well, I know what I want now. And like I said, we worked 3 years on this guitar. They never put my picture in an ad. They didn't put anybody's picture in an ad, really. That's not what they did, unless it was in the Wood and Steel that came out, you know, their newsletter. But nothing in magazines. You never saw my picture, anything. And this guitar continued to sell. It's an amazing thing. I just have to say, I believe it was blessed. You know, in Proverbs 8 and 12, I know this is not a Sunday string along, but I'll have to preach a little bit. Proverbs 8 and 12, for I, wisdom, dwell with prudence and find out knowledge of witty inventions. And I think we had some really great ideas. And so this guitar really changed my life and changed some things, I think, too, at Taylor, you know, because it became their most successful, as according to them, their most successful signature guitar. And you know, look at me. I'm not a famous guy. I mean, I have a lot of friends out there. Thank you, but I think it was really totally blessed. We were only going to make 100 guitars, and I said, well, he said, we'll make a black one. I said, well, I like black, but I also like natural. Well, we'll make 100 black and 100 natural. Don't worry, T.J. Baden, don't worry. He patted me on the back. They'll sell. Well, they sold over 400 in a day and a half at the NAMM show. And they're going, oh no. And so they were limited. And so they had to go back and unsell guitars. And they said, well, we're going to have to continue to produce these guitars the next year. So they made a few changes. They said, what changes would you want that would be minor? I said, I'd like to have the strap button up here, like a Gretsch or like a Les Paul, you know, or any electric guitar. And I'd like to have the input jack down here on the lower bow. And so that's just a couple little changes. The first black model that came out in 2000 was supposed to have been clear black, like similar to what you see in a Paul Reed Smith. You know, just where you could see the grain of the wood, even though it was black. Turns out sometimes a little bit more grayish color, a little bit of a tan come out sometimes of the wood. But I'm the only guy that never got one because they made mine solid black. Then they made all the rest in clear black. And they, like I said, they just sold really great. So they made them the next year. Then they took it out of the catalog, but people kept ordering them, so they put it back in the catalog. And it was that way for, I think, about 10 or 11 years. In and out of the catalog, they finally just said, okay, it's part of the line now. So it became a wonderful selling guitar, and there were just hundreds of these all around the world. Mike Robertson's that has worked with me for years. He's in real estate now, doing very well, but he still works with me. You'll find his name on my website. But he sold over 100 himself at L&M Music back years ago. And so I can say that this truly was blessed. I started, and I wrote a lot of songs on the DDSM. I mean, you can still find them out there. They're kind of hard to find, but if you find one, if you see one, you get it. Yeah, I've played this guitar on the Opry many times, and others like it many, many times. You know, I always said, you know, a good guitar is one that you can go out in front of any audience and not have to think about what guitar you're playing or what strings you have or what pickup you have, or you're just playing. You're not, I mean, you've done all that and you're just playing your guitar. That's the guitar. And this was one of those guitars, I tell you. And probably more than any guitar I've ever had, this is that guitar. And so it was really a wonderful instrument. It came down to one day, they said, well, we're not going to make any more signature guitars. And the guitar was still selling, but you know, things change. And we're not going to do any more clinics, and they changed it to some other program. And I said, well, that's okay. And then I got an offer from Larry Thomas to go with Fender and represent their Guild line that he said needed help. And so that's when I told Bob, I said, you know, I guess if I'm going to make a change, I'm a grandfather now, maybe it's time to do that. And but I have to say, I told him back then, because a lot of people, why did you ever? I have to say, just like I said to Bob Taylor, I'll never forget you guys. You were probably the best thing up until that time that ever happened to me, ever in my whole life, according to being, as far as my career of being a guitar player. And I'll be forever grateful to Bob Taylor, Kurt Listug, and also T.J. Bade for the opportunity they gave me. And so many people, why is there a white rose on your guitar? I mean, whether it was in Japan or China, you know, Lord, I travel all over the world with them. I mean, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, all over Europe, Canada. And I would tell the story of the white rose. And, I probably will do that on one of my string-alongs very, very soon. But, you know, I wrote a lot of songs with the DDSM. I start off like that. Been a long time. And I played this on Greg Laurie's Harvest Crusades, several of them. Huge venues, and at the Grand Ole Opry Minute, never had a feedback problem with this guitar, ever. I mean, it was just a wonderful, wonderful guitar. I remember one time I was trying to record this song, Nothing's Too Good for a Friend, and my wife called me to dinner, and I said, well, I better get back at it. I had my studio in my house at that time. And I just kind of tried to, you know, after dinner, went back in my studio, tried to relax my fingers and limber them up, and I just went like this. Nothing's too good for a friend. It's a song I wrote for Marcel Dadi, who died on Flight 800. You know, he wasn't supposed to have been on that flight, really. He was at the Chet Atkins Appreciation Society convention. I remember my daughter Holly said, "Dad, can I go get an autograph from Marcel on my pick?" She had this big model of a speed pick from Fred Kelly. Fred Kelly was there, and I said, "Well, you better do it now, and because you may not see him, you know." And had no idea what I was saying, and we were on our way to Texas to do some teaching videos, and heard it on the news, and we're going, "Oh, I hope Marcel was not on that flight," but he was, and he lost his life on that, and a lot of other people in the music business, because the NAMM show, Summer NAMM, was right at that same time. He played Ovation guitars, and he flew up to see the guys in Connecticut, New Hartford. And then he took a flight on another day, but you know, we can't calculate things like that. You know, life, as some people say, is uncertain. But to me, you know, there is a certainty, and if we know Christ, and I know this is not a Sunday string along, but there's so many things in life that are certain, and I think of a certainty, this guitar was supposed to happen, and it did. The DDSM Taylor, I'm so thankful for this. I'm not saying I deserved it. You know, only by the grace of God, I can say, okay, thank God, I'll take it. I'll take it. Well, God bless y'all, and thank you for joining in with our January Pick Fest, and I hope you'll continue to have a great year. And more blessing, less stressing. God bless.